Good evening. My name is John H., and I'm an alcoholic. In this Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar, we're going to go through the recovery section of the Big Book line by line. We are going to take the action that our founders and the first 100 people who recovered say that we must do to overcome this seemingly hopeless condition of mind and body. Now, I don't claim to be any kind of a big book and 12-step guru or expert, not by any means. I am no kind of deep spiritual advisor. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple of recovered alcoholics reached out their hand to me and said, "We have a different way." Now, this is based on the Canadian method pioneered by the Golden Slippers, but I also borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes, from Chuck C., from Clancy, and from all of the giants upon whose shoulders we are riding. Now, I would love it if you could grab a couple of friends and listen to these sessions together, because working the steps with other people is always more powerful than trying to go through them alone. So you're going to need a large print big book, a highlighter, and a pen, and some willingness. And as you guys will see, we open every session with a set-aside prayer to more open our mind to be more receptive to this information. Thank you so much for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, John.
During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the Big Book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we might not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with a set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, welcome everybody. That's my friend Eric down in the corner there. I usually he participates in these, but he's been out of town. So anything that I spoke in the 4th step and the 9th step about him, I did have his permission to do that. And I'm glad that he's able to sit in and join us on this last session. Funny enough, I know that I go fast, but I'm going to be going extra fast today because we've got probably 2 to 2.5 hours of material that I'm going to try to put into an hour and a half. And remember, you can always get onto YouTube and type in Code Blue Big Book, and I actually have 2 sessions there, and you can listen because every session is different. So you can listen to session 15, either one of those or both of them, if you miss some of the notes, because again, I am going to be going kind of fast today. So, all right, guys, we are on page 89, Working with Others. Chapter 7, Working with Others. Before we get started, at the top of the page there, let's write Program of Identification. Program of Identification. You know, when we come in here, we all think that we are completely different, that our situation is different. You guys don't understand, man. My situation is different from anyone that's ever been in these rooms before, right? And that kind of thinking kills a lot of us, quite frankly, right? So one guy that I like to listen to, Clancy, he says one of the things he tries to do is he tries to convince other people that they're enough like us so that they'll begin to take actions, right, the steps that they don't believe in and that they don't think will work. Right? He says that people that come into these rooms, and if they can in their mind find enough differences between them and the people in these rooms, it gives them a reason to walk out the door and to pick up that drink, right? So we kind of want to get people to identify with us so that they can see that we were like them and you know what we're like now. So this is definitely a program of identification, and Bill saw that early on. You know, particularly, he went out and tried to evangelize when he first got sober, and he discovered that when he talked to people one-on-one and explained what it was like for him, things worked out a little bit better. So we're going to highlight the top 3 lines. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. So highlight that. And off to the right, we're going to write sponsoring others. Sponsoring others. It works when all other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Just circle that 12th suggestion or highlight it. You know, and you don't need to write this down, but you'll remember it because, you know, people who like to hide behind the fact that we have the word suggestions in here, it's like, well, these are suggestions. You know, I really, you know, it means that I don't really have to do them. Well, I got bad news for those guys because they're the only suggestions we have. So if you don't do that, there's not much else for you to do, right? Carry this message to other alcoholics. Highlight the next 3 lines. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. So next to that, we're going to write, carry the message, not the alcoholic. Right? Carry the message, not the alcoholic. They're not gonna hop onto our back and be borrowing money and you know and this and that, right? We're gonna carry the message, not the alcoholic. And I would assume that's true in Al-Anon, right? Carry the message, not the Al-Anon person. Life will take on new meaning to watch people recover, to see them help others. To watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. Underline this little phrase, this is an experience you must not miss, and circle that word must. We know you will not want to miss it, and then highlight to the end of the paragraph. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. So what we just highlighted right there, you can write promise, right? That they're giving us a promise. They're telling us that this is going to be the best part of our life, right? Coming in here and seeing our friends in AA and helping the newcomer. And where it says frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives, let's write greet all newcomers. Right next to that, greet all newcomers. So, you know, you go to a meeting and you've been going to that meeting for, say, 6 months. And you know everybody that goes to that meeting. All of a sudden you see somebody come walking in there and you've never seen this person before, right? We're going to go up to that person and we're going to put our hand out and we're going to say welcome. So we want to greet all newcomers. I'll never forget, man, I got out of detox and I straggled into the New Hope Alano and I'm looking down at my shoes and I walked into this big meeting. And after the meeting, probably 15 people came up to me and they all shook my hands and some of them gave me hugs. I didn't like that too much, I'll tell you, but some of them gave me hugs. hugs, and I was thinking, well, how in the world do these people know that I'm a newcomer? This is such a big meeting. How do they know that? Well, they go to the meeting every week, and of course, nobody had seen me before, so they made sure a bunch of them to come up and make me feel welcome. And sure enough, at 4 days sober, I went back to that meeting the following week, right? Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. So next to that, we're going to write detox, jails, treatment centers, meetings. That's where that's where we get our prospects these days, in most cases anyway. Detox, jails, treatment centers, and meetings. I mean, quite frankly, most of the if not all of the sponsees I have, I've met them at meetings, right? Or we take a meeting into a jail, or into a detox center, or into a treatment center, and that's where you can meet the prospects. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. Highlight the next 3 lines, or 2.5. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. Just that little phrase there. You don't have to write this down, but what they're saying there is they're telling me that my worst defects and some of the most shameful things that I've done in my life are now my assets, because I can share them with somebody else who's done the same and thinks they're the worst person on earth, and they don't stand a chance in hell of recovering. So these horrible things from my past are now my assets, because I'm going to use them to help other people. So we're flipping it around, man. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize, and then underline that last phrase: to be helpful is our only aim. To be helpful is our only aim. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. Okay, highlight the next sentence. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. Yep, and then highlight the next little line too. You may spoil a later opportunity. So right next to that, or maybe at the top, you can draw an arrow up to the top and write, ask him or her, do you want to stop? We're just going to come right out and say it. Do you want to stop drinking? Right? And if they're hemming and hawing, well, my wife told me to come in here. We want to get off, if they're not serious and they don't want to stop, we're going to find somebody that does, right? Back in the day, we read in the foreword or the intro, I forget where, that 50% of the people that came in and did the work recovered at once, and 25% showed up and recovered later. That's a 75% rate. Now, what they did in the early 40s that we don't do anymore is they would interview people. They would sit them down and they would interview them for I don't know how long, but they would find out all about their drinking history, and they would come to the conclusion, indeed, this person is a real alcoholic. And through that interview process, they would find out that this person has had enough and they are ready to try to do something to change their life. So you would have to interview in order to be able to come to these meetings, right? Today we don't do that, right? Anybody can come to these meetings who wants to stop drinking, but if you're going to sponsor somebody, you might you want to make darn sure that they're going to be willing to do the work. That's why at the beginning, in Code Blue, are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol and or drugs, right? All my sponsees are going to write that, they're going to sign it, and they're going to date it, because we're going to do some serious work if they want to recover. This advice is given. Oh, by the way, we can also we can write okay on the left side or right side. Write okay to tell war stories when on a 12-step call. right? I don't want to be telling war stories in a first step meeting. I don't want to drone on and on about, it was so many men, I drank and I drank. No, but when you're on a 12-step call, you can tell enough about your history so that the person realizes you are like them. So my sponsor had me write okay to tell war stories when on a 12-step call. And I always say that if it's printed in this book, then you had better take it. You better take it to the bank. If it's something that we're writing down that I was taught or somebody else was taught, then it's my opinion or somebody else's opinion, and you can take it or leave it, right? But if it's in this book, I would recommend that you take it because your life might depend on it, or the life of your sponsee. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they are dealing with a sick person. Again, everybody has been telling the alcoholic that they have low moral character, they have no willpower, they're a lousy human being. Why can't you pull yourself together, damn it? Right? Well, they're going to realize for the first time in their life that they are sick, right? But that does not get them off the hook from taking the cure, right? From doing the work. But they're going to discover that they are sick. They're not a bad person. They're a sick person. If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned. So again, we're going to write something else. Off to the left, we're going to write, be honest. Be honest. Will take a lot of action. So you're going to tell the guy, you're going to be honest, and tell him it's going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to do a lot of work if you want to get well. So I just wrote, be honest, will take a lot of action. Let the person know that, right? Because you don't want to. You want him to know or her to know going in that if they want to get well, there's going to be some work that needs to be done. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Highlight the next little line there. Wait for the end of a spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Just that little line there. And then right below it, we're going to write 2 qualifiers. These are the 2 qualifiers that we're going to ask the person, and we're going to label them. Then let his family or a friend put a 1 in front of ask. Ask him if he wants to quit for good. So that's the first qualifier. Hey, do you want to quit drinking for good? Right? I know we stay sober one day at a time, but if somebody just got out of jail after crashing their car and running into somebody, they're probably going to say, yeah, I never want to do that again, right? So, do you want to quit for good? And put a 2 in front of if he would go to any extreme to do so. So that's that thing that we write at the beginning is, are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? Would he go to any extreme? That's the second one. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. Okay, there's that word recovered again. Right? Everybody says, you can't recover from this. You're going to be an alcoholic for the rest of your life. And I say, you know what, man? When I came in here, I couldn't stop using. I hated myself. I hated everybody. I was suicidal. I didn't want to live. And I've absolutely recovered from that situation. Now, am I cured from alcoholism? No, I'm never cured. But you're doggone right, I've recovered. If I can't recover, why would I do all this? My life today is quite good. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship, just highlight that, one of a fellowship, that little line there, who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you. And then highlight the next sentence, if he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Right? Very important. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. So, what happens if we get somebody at the end of a particularly bad bout they're going to be much more receptive to saying, yeah, man, I want to quit for good. Yes, I'm willing to do anything. You know, we have a thing called self-will. And at the end of a bad drinking bout, our self-will is pretty low, and we're more open to receiving help from other people and information. But if we manage to go to some meetings and stay sober for a couple of weeks, we're going to say to ourselves, you know what, man? I overreacted. Oh my God, did I ever overreact? I can't believe I went to that stupid meeting. Oh my God, I think I gave that guy my phone number. This is crazy. You know, so our self-will comes back and we say, we got this. But guess what's going to happen, man? We're going to go out, we're going to drink again, and then we're going to be at that low spot. Remember that disease chart. You know, when we think we got it and all these things build up and we start the spree again and we go through it, we come out of it remorseful, saying we're never going to do it again, and then slowly our self-will builds up and we take that, and it just goes on and on and on, right? So we want to get them when they're at a low spot. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place this. Here, no specific rule can be given. At the bottom of the page, let's write, we are in a fellowship, we work a program. And we are in a fellowship, we work a program. So the fellowship is the meetings, the going out to Perkins, the going out for coffee, getting together and having a pancake breakfast, getting together with sober people and doing a bike ride, right? But the program of recovery is working the steps with another person. And I confused that for 20 years when I would come in and out of these rooms. I thought that the fellowship and the meetings was the program, and I was wondering why it never worked for me and it worked for other people. That's because I didn't understand that I had to do the doggone work in order to get better. So we are in a fellowship, we work a program. We're going to write a few things that we can do, right? So we need some room here. You can write, go to meetings. These are just things that we can do. Go to meetings, do the steps, sponsor others, go to detox centers, treatment, show up early, set up chairs, answer phones, make coffee, be a GSR, be a trusted servant, take a topic. These are just a few things. I'll repeat it, but again, if you can go online if you don't get it all written down, because we got so much to cover today. Go to meetings, do the steps, sponsor others, go to detox centers, treatment, show up early, set up chairs, answer phones, make coffee, be a GSR, be a trusted servant, take a topic. Those are just some of the things that we can do in the fellowship. Obviously, doing the steps is the program. Working the steps with another human being or group of humans like we're doing here. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters. Usually, the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. Again, we meet him at meetings. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. You know, people feel pressure, they're going to cut and run. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Underlined to the end of the paragraph here, call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. And again, that's why we like to get people. I mean, I worked with a guy, after a really bad bout where he almost got fired, a girlfriend left him, maybe he got put in jail, he'd come out and he'd be real willing. But this particular fellow, man, he's sober for even 2 or 3 days. I've never seen such a turnaround. After 2 or 3 days, he said, no, that was a big mistake. I'm okay, man. I got this. Don't worry. I'm never drinking again. I don't need you guys. I don't need AA, right? And that's what we all do to some extent. See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Okay, highlight to himself. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. Highlight to there. Next to that, we can write brief war stories. Brief war stories. And then right under brief war stories, you might as well write 4 moods. 4 moods qualifying yourself as just as bad, not unique. 4 moods, and we're going to label them 1 through 4. 4 moods qualifying yourself as just as bad, not unique. Right? Again, we all think that it's the first time on earth there's been anybody with our unique, symptomatic and problems. Right? Nobody else is in my situation or ever has been. Right? So we're going to put a 1 in front of if. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. Okay? I'm not going to label it, but obviously maybe talkative would be. Put a 2 in front of if, the second one. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit. But say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. Put a 3 in front of if. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. And then put a 4 in front of if. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. You know, when I was fresh out of college and I started working for Color Tile, there was a guy, the regional manager, and he said, this was back when you could smoke everywhere, right? He said, you have a pipe in the drawer and you have cigarettes, because if your customer comes in and they're smoking, I want you to smoke. You make sure that you know all about the sports and everything that's going on, so if they talk about it, you can contribute. Basically, he was telling me to mirror your customer, because then the customer is going to think that he's more like you and he's more likely to buy from you. And quite frankly, there's no difference between that and between this, right? Bill Wilson was a salesman, and I think he really believed that we had to sell this program to people. And I believe it too. I think one of the jobs of people in AA is we've got to keep people interested and entertained long enough so they keep coming back and they do the work, right? If it's dull and it's boring, they're going to walk out the door. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Okay, highlight this little sentence. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. So next to that, we can write what it was like. Right? So this is when you speak, they're going to give us, basically it's what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, right? So this is what it was like. And we do this on one-on-one when we're talking to somebody. It's the same exact thing we do when you see people up at a meeting talking. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree, right? I mean, I always good old Eric in the corner. I love the example about how he woke up one morning and he said, "That is it. I'm quitting for good. This alcohol is killing me. I'm never having another drink as long as I live. I can't take it anymore." Right? Well, later that day, maybe 5:30, he's on his porch on his 3rd cocktail, and he said, "Oh my God, that's right. I quit this morning." Right? That's the mental twist, and we all have it. Right? We all have it. As we have done on the chapter on alcoholism. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless, circle the word hopeless, the hopeless feature of the malady. Now there's a film of Bill Wilson, and I don't know, I can't even remember, but there's a film of Bill Wilson, and he talks about how when he goes to the new man, what he does is he reaches out one hand, and in this hand is hopelessness. You're probably going to die. This disease is killing people right and left. So he gives hopelessness in one hand, and then after the guy receives that, he gives hope in the other. So that's very important. When Bill first went out and tried to 12-step people when he first got sober, he went out and he said, "You got to have this great white light experience," and nobody would listen to him, right? So we got to talk about step 1 first, about the hopeless feature. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Remember, an obsession is an idea that overcomes all ideas to the contrary, and we take that first drink. Let's highlight the next 4 lines. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. So next to where it says, don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. Next to that you can write, he will get the book, try it himself, and say it doesn't work. Right? He will get the book, try it himself, and say it doesn't work. And I mean, I did that to some extent a little bit when I read the book, but I didn't even, I just kind of read it over and I really didn't even give it a fair shake. But he might do it, and obviously if we try to do this without the guidance of a sponsor or other people, it's not going to be very effective. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can, if he is not too alcoholic. But insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. After himself, write beyond human aid. That's what it talks about in the book, beyond human aid. You know, there's this, and I think everybody should watch this because I thought it was very edifying. I learned a lot. There's an HBO documentary, and it's called Risky Drinking. Right? You got to see it because one of the guys in there, I think he spent tens of thousands of dollars, and he had a team of doctors, and what they tried to do is they tried him to control his drinking while drinking. Well, in the doctor's opinion, we know that for a fact that can't work because once we take alcohol into our body, we can't control what he takes. But this guy, I don't know how much he spent, but he was there for months, and they tried to teach him how to control his drinking while drinking. He got back home, and he went out and bought like 3 half-gallons of rum, and he had his little measuring cup, and he's just filling them up and drinking. I mean, it simply doesn't work. It's risky drinking. It's kind of crazy, man. I mean, I didn't know that's a cottage industry. I mean, what better way to get money out of alcoholics? To tell them, I think I can teach you how to control your drinking while drinking. My God, I would have paid everything I had. Right? But it doesn't work.
There's a group doing it in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
Just saw it on the internet the other day.
In California.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, if you're a real alcoholic, we know that doesn't work. The book does tell us that problem drinkers can stop without doing the work, and some of them can even moderate their drinking, right? But if you're a real alcoholic, good luck. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Remember, that's the allergy and the obsession. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Underline this next sentence. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. A lot of people they are dead long before they get into these rooms. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness, circle that word again, about the hopelessness of alcoholism, and then highlight because you offer a solution. That's what Bill did. Hopelessness in one hand and hope in the other. Okay? And then off to the left, we're going to write, reflect on hopelessness. Right? And then you can write obsession/allergy. Right? So again, and just obsession/allergy. The obsession is we tried the dickens to quit, but from time to time we're going to take the first drink. And the allergy is once we start, we can't stop. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question if he will. Okay, so we're going to highlight the next 4 lines. Tell him exactly what happened to you Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. Okay, so next to that, off to the right, we're going to write what happened. Right? So on the other side of the page, we had what it was like, and this is what happened. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. Again, the squiggly writing, highlight to the end of the paragraph. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. So after principles, we're going to write second step. Second step. And then off to the right, you can write Ebby 12-stepping Bill. Right? That's where that whole idea came from. You know, Ebby was talking with Bill, and Bill was half drunk. Ebby had only been sober 30 days. You know, and Bill was talking about, or Ebby was talking about how he had gotten religion, and he was talking about this experience, and Bill got very angry, and they were arguing back and forth, and I think Ebby finally got tired, and he finally said, Bill, choose your own damn conception of God then, right? And when he said that, this moved from a religious message to a spiritual message, because religion tells us how we must believe. We got to believe this way in order to follow that narrow pathway to get into heaven, right? In spirituality, we don't care how you believe. We simply ask, are you willing to believe, right? Big difference. When dealing with such a person, you would better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. There is no use arising any prejudice he may have against certain theological terms and conceptions about which he may already be confused. Don't raise such issues, no matter what your own convictions are. Okay, so off to the right, we're going to write slow wake up, right? Slow wake up, and then you can write your own conception of God. Right? Many of us are going to have a slow spiritual wake up. Your own conception of God. Nobody else's. Now, I've got a brother, right? My brother Mike, and he's living in my brother Steve's basement right now. I used to be able to, get him, or he used to go to a meeting now and again, but he's online now. He isolates down there, and when we isolate and drink and use, we become even more crazy than we already are. And he is saying AA's a cult, right? He's got some people online, and there's some kind of little chat room, and he's saying AA is a cult. And you know what? Well, we're not a cult because, first of all, you pick your own conception of God. Right? A cult, a few of the characteristics, you don't need to write this, but, authoritarian leadership, right? We don't have any leaders, only trusted servants, right? Cults, they alone have the truth. Well, this book is telling us right and left that we got to listen to ministers and doctors and anybody else that can help us, right? In a cult, they alone have the truth. In a cult, they isolate you from the world, right? We want you to go back out into the world and fix your mistakes and then go back out and be an example. The cults are many times interested in having you make them money, right? All we do here is throw $1 in to pay for the lights and the rent, right? They tell us that we've got to believe like them. Well, here we're like, no, you believe how you want to believe. And in a cult, if you don't do exactly what they say, they threaten you with kicking you out. Well, here in AA, the only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. Not even an honest desire, just a simple desire to stop drinking. So, we're not a cult. Though many people, if you get online, there's some crazy things. Your prospect may belong to a religious denomination. His religious education and training may be far superior to yours. In that case, he is going to wonder how you can add anything to what he already knows. But he will be curious to learn why his own convictions have not worked and why yours seem to work so well. He may be an example of the truth that faith alone is insufficient. Okay, so we're going to highlight 2, 4, 6, 7 lines. To be vital, faith must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action, circle action. Let him see that you are not there to instruct him in religion. Admit that he probably knows more about it than you, but call to his attention the fact that however deep his faith and knowledge, He could not have applied it or he would not drink. So I'm listening to this guy, his tapes, and God, his name escapes me right now. But he said the only people that are harder to sponsor than priests or ministers are drug and alcohol counselors, right? Because they know it all, right? But they don't, not if they're using. At the bottom of the page, we're going to write self-knowledge doesn't work. Self-knowledge doesn't work. And next to what we just highlighted, off to the right, we're going to write don't force religion on anyone. We do not do that. Don't force religion on anyone. And at the bottom, self-knowledge doesn't work. Perhaps your story will help him see where he has failed to practice the very precepts he knows so well. We represent no particular faith or denomination. We are dealing only with general principles common to most denominations. So at the top of the page, we're going to write organized religion, or organized REL period, is an outside issue. Organized religion is an outside issue. I don't care where you go to church, if you go to church, right? We are dealing with general principles common to most denominations, right? So organized religion is an outside issue. Outline the program of action, okay? Underline program of action, and right above it, write steps, not meetings. Now, I'm not saying, and I never want anybody to get the idea that I don't think meetings are important. They're vital. They're vital, right? But the program of action is not meetings. The program of action is working the steps with another human being. Outline the program of action, explaining how you made a self-appraisal. Next to self-appraisal, write 4. Right, that's the 4th step. How you straightened out your past, right in there, write 9th. That's a 9th. And why you are now endeavoring to be helpful to him. Right in there, write 12. That's the 12th step. And then we're going to highlight the next sentence. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Now that is very important, guys. My second sponsor, the guy that I really started working with, I said, well, I can't call him up. I'm going to be bothering him. He's going to be with his family. I'm not going to ask him to meet me, 1 hour a week. That's ridiculous. I'll be impinging upon his life. And what I know now, and I didn't know then, is that helping somebody else is an absolute vital part in our own recovery, and we're not impinging on anybody, right? That's why people raise their hands, right? Somebody that raises their hand, you go up to them, hey, will you sponsor me? It's like, nah, I was just kidding. They're not going to say that. Actually, he may be helping you more than you are helping him. And that's quite true, because not everybody I've sponsored got sober, right? But I'll tell you what, me helping them out, I always did stay sober, right? So then we're going to highlight the next 5 lines. Make it plain he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help other alcoholics when he escapes his own difficulties. Suggest how important it is that he places the welfare of other people ahead of his own. You can stop highlighting there. And I'm going to have you write something, but there are qualifiers. So off to the left, you can write, work with others after 4 months. Okay, now, I'm not saying that you can't work with somebody after 1 day. Right? You can, but after 1 day sober, you're probably not going to be able to take somebody through the book and work the steps. But you can certainly pass your strength and hope onto that person, give them a ride to a meeting, and do other things like that. But my sponsor said work with others after 4 months. However, right under that, write Dr. Bob 10 days. Right, so Dr. Bob started working. He went to the hospital and met Bill Dotson after 10 days. So take it with a grain of salt. I think that you're able to work with somebody when you've got something to give, right? There was no way that I could have taken anybody through the book and had them do the steps until I had done that myself, though. So as far, there's no way I couldn't have told anybody how to do the 4th step and heard their 5th step until I did it. I couldn't tell anybody how to go out and make amends until I had done at least a few of them, right? So I think that's what my sponsor meant in that case. Make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needn't see you again if he doesn't want to. Highlight the next two lines. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you have helped him. Right? So I've had some people that, they stop calling me or doing this or that, and then all of a sudden they feel like they can't go to the same meeting that I met them at because they're going to see me there. That's ridiculous. I mean, I've even called people up and I said, you get your ass back to that meeting. I'm not upset at all. I want to see you at that meeting, We're funny people, we alcoholics. I mean, we're going to think that just because we stopped working with somebody, that we can't go back into a meeting that's saving our life. We're going to highlight the next two lines as well. If your talk has been sane, quiet, and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. Right? Maybe you have disturbed him about the question of alcoholism. This is all to the good. Okay? Again, underlined to the end of the paragraph, the more hopeless he feels, the better. He will be more likely to follow your suggestions. So next to that one, we can write action. Action. I mean, you know what? Somebody who's relapsed over and over and over and over, and then you share the experience that you kept relapsing over and over and over, and you almost died until you did the work, maybe that's going to convince them that maybe they had better do the work if they want to save their lives. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all of the program. Right? He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning. So you can write steps 4 and 5 there, which requires discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. Circle action. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of this book. So, real quick, man, in 1998, I was at another all-time low. All right, I had a lot of them. And I honestly feel that the only real bottom is death. And unfortunately, we see that all too often. Reading it in the newspaper, and also people that you see at these meetings, all of a sudden you read and you see they're dead. In 1998, I went into treatment. I kind of snuck into treatment. And the counselor said, you know what? He made me up a little name tag, and he said, you're going to die if you don't go through this. So he snuck me through the 30-day program. It was not inpatient, it was outpatient. So I went through a 30-day outpatient treatment. Then I went into one of the toughest halfway houses in the country, Progress Valley. I spent 3 months in Progress Valley, right? And, I got through that. Then I went into Catholic Charities. I spent 6 months in Catholic Charities sober living program, right? Then I moved into Minnetonka with a sober guy, right? So I move into this sober guy, and I got 10 months sober when I move in with him, right? Now, it never occurred to me to work with other people. I must be the only guy, I'm sure there's others, but 10 months I'm doing all this stuff, and it never occurred to me to work with other people because I never had a sponsor through all of this, right? And, I lived with that guy for a while, and I got a 1-year medallion, right? I got a 1-year medallion, but I'm running around, I'm still lying, I'm cheating, I'm stealing, right? I'm a commissioned salesman, I'm not being honest, treating women badly, and I got that shiny 1-year medallion, right? But that medallion didn't mean squat. I had not drank for 1 year, but I was not living by these principles, and the medallion meant nothing. So, of course, shortly after, I relapsed, and the guy booted me out, because I didn't do the work. But because I institutionalized myself for that long, I was able to go without a drink or a drug. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. If he shows interest, lend him your copy of this book. Top of the page, we're going to write desperation equals willingness. Desperation equals willingness. Hopelessness equals teachability. Right? So, my sponsor, man, he said, you make sure when they hit bottom, you let them hit it hard, right? He said the harder they hit bottom, the better, right? Because desperation equals willingness and hopelessness equals teachability.